My name is Ethan Carter, and I'm 29 years old. These days, people see me as successful, a writer, a business owner, someone who built his own life from scratch. But the truth is, every victory I've had is built on ashes. Ashes of the family that abandoned me, of the lies that once burned my reputation to the ground, and of the boy I used to be before betrayal cut me deeper than any wound could. A few weeks ago, I was sitting at my desk finishing up a project when my phone lit up. 6 missed calls from a number I hadn't seen in years. My parents. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, unable to breathe. The same people who had kicked me out at 16, who hadn't lifted a finger to check if I was alive, suddenly wanted to talk. I didn't answer. Not right away. But the call dragged me back to the beginning. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, with a twin brother, Adam. You'd think being twins meant we shared everything, but in reality, Adam had it all, and I had scraps. My parents treated him like a golden child, destined for greatness, showered with praise, celebrated for even the smallest achievements. Me? I was the black sheep, the constant disappointment, the one who didn't measure up. The favoritism wasn't subtle. On our birthdays, Adam would get a huge party with balloons, music, and friends running through the house. Meanwhile, my cake was an afterthought, candles half melted, no friends allowed over. When Adam had sleepovers, I wasn't permitted to join in or invite anyone of my own. If I asked why, my dad would say, because Adam deserves it. He works harder. But that wasn't true. Adam didn't work harder. He just fit their idea of perfect. He was studious, quiet, always eager to impress. I was more outgoing, into sports, into making friends. And that was apparently a crime in their house. The only person who ever made me feel seen was my grandmother. Every time she visited, she slipped me chocolate bars and a couple of crumpled bills with a wink, whispering, "Don't let anyone tell you you're less, Ethan. You're my boy, and I believe in you." Those words became my lifeline. As we got older, the gap widened. My parents criticized everything I did. If I brought home a B on a test, they called me lazy. If I played basketball with friends, they said I was wasting time. Meanwhile, Adam could do no wrong. By sophomore year, things got worse. I remember one night like it was yesterday. I had downloaded Snapchat, just like every other kid in school, to stay connected with my friends. My parents found out, and they exploded. They stormed into my room, threw my things around, and ripped the door off its hinges. "You'll have no privacy under this roof," my dad shouted. And Adam? Instead of standing by me, he smirked. He thrived in that environment, learned quickly that if he threw me under the bus, my parents would applaud him. He lied about me constantly, accusing me of things I didn't do. If money went missing, it was Ethan stole it. If something broke, it was Ethan was careless. My parents didn't even ask for my side. Their minds were made up before the words left his mouth. The jealousy in Adam's eyes grew sharper the more I tried to live a normal teenage life. At school, I had friends, people liked me. I could strike up a conversation with anyone. Adam was the opposite, awkward, withdrawn. He couldn't understand how I fit in so easily, and instead of trying to connect, he decided to destroy. On our 14th birthday, the dam burst. For reasons I'll never fully understand, none of Adam's friends showed up to his party. He spent the day sulking while my friends surprised me with ice cream and a night out. That contrast broke something inside him. From then on, it wasn't enough to be favored at home. He wanted me ruined everywhere else. He started spreading rumors. At first, whispers that I was arrogant, spoiled, cruel. But soon, it escalated to something darker. He told classmates that I hit him. He'd show up to school with bruises he gave himself, black eyes from punching his own face, marks from bumping his shoulder against walls, and claim I had done it. My first reaction was a short, disbelieving laugh, because the absurdity of the lie felt like a shield, but the laughter died in my throat when I saw the first flicker of doubt in a friend's eyes. But kids believe what they want to believe, and soon the whispers became stares, then silence. Friends drifted away. Invitations stopped coming. Teachers eyed me with suspicion. It felt like the ground beneath me was cracking. The rumors reached the principal. One day, I was summoned to his office, Adam already sitting there with our parents flanking him. I remember the way Adam looked at me, calm, smug, like he had already won. The principal leaned forward, voice stern. "Ethan, there are serious allegations against you. Your brother says you've been violent at home." I froze. My heart raced. But I told the truth. I said it wasn't true, that Adam was lying. I begged him to see through it. But Adam doubled down, painting me as jealous, angry, violent. And my parents? They cried for him, hugged him, told him he was brave for speaking up. I'll never forget that moment. Sitting there, watching the people who were supposed to protect me treat me like a monster, all because of lies. The principal suspended me for 10 days. Said the school couldn't tolerate bullying. Said it would set an example. When we got home, my father started packing my things. Just like that. 16 years old, no warning, no chance to fight for myself. My mom stood there, silent tears on her face, while Adam watched with a blank, unnerving calm, as if he were merely an observer to a scene he had set in motion. I begged them not to do it. I begged Adam to tell the truth. But he turned away. And then, just like that, I was kicked out. My grandmother, Ruth, arrived the night I was thrown out. She drove a dented navy sedan that smelled like peppermint and laundry soap, and she walked up our front steps like a 5'2" thunderstorm. I was sitting on the curb with my suitcase and a trash bag full of clothes, face hot from crying. When she saw me, her jaw tightened in that way I'd only ever seen once before, at my grandfather's funeral, when she'd refused to let the pastor rush the service. "Get in the car, sweetheart," she said, opening the passenger door. "You're coming with me." I did, because there was nothing left to do. Before leaving, she rang our doorbell. When my dad opened it, she didn't shout. She didn't beg. She stood upright and spoke like a teacher whose class had tested her patience for the last time. "You put your hands on this boy's life one more time," she said, "and I'll put my hands on the phone and call every person I need to. Don't call me. Don't call him. We are done." My mother tried to cry her way around it, said I'd made terrible choices, that they had to protect Adam. Grandma's eyes didn't flicker. "Protect him from what? Truth?" she asked. "I have ears, and I've been using them longer than any of you have been alive." She returned to the car, buckled my seatbelt, drove. Her house sat 2 towns over, in a quiet street where the maples arched over the road and threw patchy shadows on the porch. That first night, she made tea and a grilled cheese and didn't ask me to explain what couldn't be explained. We sat at her tiny table, 2 mugs steaming, and she let silence do the slow work of stitching me back together. "Ethan," she said finally, "you are not what people say when they're scared or small. You are who you decide to be when they're loudest." I nodded. It felt like she had slid a plank across a deep, dark gap and given me one steady step to stand on. When I returned to school after my suspension, the hallways were different, even though the paint and the lockers were the same. Conversations went quiet when I walked by. Desks that used to be empty suddenly filled with bodies, unwilling to leave a space beside me. Teachers looked at me like a burned-out streetlight, still on the corner, but not useful for light. I kept my head down, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew there was nothing I could say that would break through a story already told 100 times. In that kind of storm, the only anchor is your own character. So I did the work. I made it to class early and stayed late. I turned in assignments with the dates circled neatly at the top. When a kid bumped me in the cafeteria and my tray clattered to the floor, I picked up the pieces and tossed them, then sat down and ate the apple from my backpack. There is a quiet that comes after humiliation, if you let it. It's not peace exactly. It's more like a steady hum, the sound of boundaries forming where none existed before. At home? No, not home. At Grandma's, life had a different rhythm. She woke at dawn, watered her houseplants like a ritual, and read the paper end to end with a pencil tucked behind her ear. She let me sleep in the spare room with the quilt she'd sewn in college. Some afternoons she'd drive me to the public library because she'd suddenly realized she had books to return, and then accidentally disappear for 2 hours so I could sit in the back and study without seeing a single familiar face. On Sundays, she made pancakes, a towering stack that we ate slowly while she told stories about the summer she'd worked in a diner. "Everybody thinks strength is loud," she said once, butter melting down the sides. "It's quiet more often than not. It's getting up and making one more pancake." By spring, something inside me moved from bruised to scarred. I learned the shape of my scar, how it tugged when I was reminded of the old house, how it ached when I saw siblings in the park sharing a joke. But I also learned that scars are proof of healing, not proof of damage. The wound was closed. I had new skin, tender, sure, but mine. I graduated high school with grades that would have surprised my parents if they'd been around to see them. They weren't. They never called. Not for graduation, not for anything. Grandma and I took a photo on the front lawn of the school. I'm smiling, but it's her smile I remember. A small, proud curve that looked like relief. I picked a state college one horizon away. Far enough to breathe, close enough to come home on weekends if Grandma needed help lifting potting soil. I didn't know what I wanted to be, which is funny now that people ask me to speak to students about finding your calling. Back then I only knew I liked words, and that words had always felt like the one place I couldn't be interrupted. So I majored in communications and minored in not running from myself. I took late shifts at the computer lab, learned what coffee did to a brain at 2 a.m., and paid attention to the way some professors spoke like builders and others like performers. I wrote papers that read like conversations. Sometimes, professors wrote back in the margins like they were writing to a person and not a grade. Somewhere in sophomore year, a friend in my dorm asked if I could help with blog posts for the club she ran. I said yes. The club president passed my name to a local nonprofit. The nonprofit passed my name to a regional brand that needed product descriptions nobody would roll their eyes at. That's how it began. I still remember the night I landed my first major client, a regional tech firm, feeling a jolt of terror and pride when their one-word email, approved, landed in my inbox at 3 a.m. I built a portfolio in a shared folder. I learned how to invoice, how to say no, how to ask for what the work was worth, and then keep a straight face while the reply loaded. I learned that meeting deadlines is not talent, it's respect. I learned that writing for other people is really listening turned into sentences. I didn't post much on social media. I wasn't hiding. That's what I told myself. But I also wasn't quite ready to let my name be bold in a place where my family could trip over it. Grandma never pushed me. She just kept cutting peonies and setting them in a jar on my desk when I came home on Fridays. After I graduated, cap, gown, a photo of Grandma and me that I framed the same day, I took a breath and didn't send out a single corporate resume. I had clients by then, a pipeline, a reputation that was small but clean. I rented a studio with a window that looked out over a bakery. Writing turned into a business because I treated it like one. I tracked everything: pitch, acceptance, edits, invoice, payment, follow-up. I kept a spreadsheet that would make an accountant slow clap. I didn't have an assistant, but I had a routine that didn't ask my motivation to do more than it was built to do. Was it lonely? Sometimes. But loneliness was honest. It didn't pretend to be love and demand I pay for the privilege. There was travel, though not the glossy kind. I taught myself to work from a bus station in Santa Fe, from a diner in Tulsa, from a motel where the HVAC wheezed like a tired dog. Moving taught me how to sit still. Seeing the country reminded me that the story I'd lived wasn't the only story to live through. The projects got bigger. A tech company needed a voice that didn't sound like a robot. A lifestyle brand wanted product pages that didn't make people feel like walking wallets. A little TV segment in a local market asked me to come talk about building credibility online. I said yes to the ones that fit my values, which narrowed things down faster than any algorithm could. Somewhere along the way, I made an Instagram for the business and kept it clean. Clips of articles, snippets of interviews, screenshots of testimonials with private info blurred out. I felt safe enough to say this is me, not because I wanted applause, but because I'd stopped needing to hide. The thing about truth is, once you set it down, it doesn't go hunting for enemies. It just sits where you put it and becomes a place to stand. One late afternoon, my old department chair emailed. Would I speak to a group of juniors about freelancing and writing for real people? I stood at the front of the room in a borrowed blazer and told them the unglamorous version, about boundaries and spreadsheets and the sacredness of giving clients words they can trust. I told them to write like they're the last honest person in the meeting. I mentioned, briefly, the season of my life when lies had shaped how people saw me, and how writing had become a way back to myself. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't need to. There's a hush that falls when you speak plainly about pain without turning it into a performance. The talk was recorded. A short clip with subtitles made the rounds in a few Facebook groups. A small TV station in another city asked me to come by for a morning segment about building a career from scratch in a digital world. I went. The host asked thoughtful questions. I answered from the part of me that had once sat in Grandma's kitchen and learned the taste of peppermint tea and dignity. When the segment aired, I posted a 30-second clip with a caption about gratitude for clients who trusted me, for mentors who answered emails at midnight, for a grandmother who insisted that survival is not the same as living. I clicked share, set the phone down, and went back to work. I didn't expect what happened next. Messages flooded in. Some were from small business owners who needed help. Some were from kids in high school who said they felt like I'd tapped the bruises no one else could see. A few were from distant relatives, cousins I hadn't heard from since childhood, congratulating me, saying they were so proud. And then a number I hadn't saved called 6 times in a row. I stared at the screen. My chest went cold. My parents. I didn't answer that day. I finished the draft in front of me, sent it, and walked 2 blocks to the bakery window. I watched the baker dust a loaf with flour and slide it onto the rack. There's a grace in ordinary labor that I hadn't understood when I was a kid. It steadies you when people try to unsteady you. That night, I called them back. My mother's voice came first, sweet with a varnish I recognized from holidays and church potlucks. She congratulated me, said they'd seen me on TV, that I'd turned out so well. My father cut in with a tone of manufactured interest, asking how my work was going before casually adding, "It must be nice to be your own boss, setting your own rates and all that." It took me a second to register the angle. I didn't answer. He said we were family. I didn't know them secrecy. Then my mother sighed. The house needed work. They were retired now. Money was tight. Could I help? The bathroom needed retiling. The roof had a leak. If I could cover it, they'd be forever grateful. I felt the old ache tug at the scar. I let it tug. I didn't fight it, and I didn't feed it either. Why now? I asked. Not accusatory. Just the truth, shaped like a question. There was a pause. My father said the words people say when they want access, not reconciliation. "We're still your parents." I thought of Grandma's hands, steady on the steering wheel. I thought of the pancakes. I thought of the library. I thought of the years without a single call. "I'm willing to talk about helping," I said, "on one condition." My father sounded relieved. "Name it. You acknowledge publicly, to our family, the truth." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't harden it either. "You tell them that Adam spread lies about me. You say you chose those lies over your son. You say it out loud, in front of the people who were told a different story." Silence. Not the respectful kind. The stunned kind. The kind that comes when someone discovers there will be a price that can't be paid with someone else's money. "That's unnecessary," my mother said quickly. "We can work this out privately." "No," I said. "You worked it out privately once before. That's how I ended up on a curb." My father's tone sharpened. He reminded me of all the years they'd kept a roof over my head. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was such a strange thing to say to the person you'd tossed out like a bag of laundry. I didn't argue. I repeated the condition. Calmly, kindly, even. I told them it wasn't revenge, it was repair. And repair requires exposure to light. We got off the phone with nothing resolved. I washed the dishes from dinner and texted Grandma that I loved her. She replied with a heart and a photo of a tomato from her garden, the caption, "First of the season." I slept. In the morning, a text from an unknown number waited on my lock screen. "Adam, long time, Ethan. Saw your big moment. Mom and Dad told me you made some insane demand. You know they'll never do it. They never chose you then, and they won't start now. Yeah, I lied when we were kids. Get over it. You're almost 30 and still crying about high school. Help them. Be a better son." I stared at the words. I didn't feel anger rise like a wave. I felt something cooler and clearer. If truth was a place to stand, then here was proof that I'd been standing in the right spot all along. I took a screenshot. Then I opened a new email. I typed the addresses of cousins and aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in a decade. I wrote, plainly, about the truth of my childhood, not as a confession, not as a plea, but as a record. I wrote about the rumors and the suspension and the curb. I wrote about Grandma Ruth. And at the end, I attached the screenshot. I hit send. Then I made coffee and opened a new document. Work to do. Words to write. A life to live. The email went out on a Thursday morning. By noon, my inbox was a bonfire. Some cousins I barely remembered wrote back, stunned. "We had no idea, Ethan. We thought you just drifted away. I'm sorry we weren't there." A few aunts apologized for believing the version of events they'd been fed. One uncle, who had always seemed distant, admitted that he'd noticed the favoritism years ago but hadn't wanted to get involved. And then came the other wave, messages from my parents. Long, furious paragraphs about betrayal, about airing family business, about how ungrateful I was. They said I was humiliating them. Adam, of course, chimed in too. His text read like a smirk. Congrats, you made yourself the victim again. Nobody cares about ancient history. You'll never get what you want. But here's the thing. I wasn't looking for what he thought I wanted. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was chasing air, clear air, where the truth could breathe without being strangled. When the messages turned threatening, I took them to a lawyer. A cease and desist letter went out within a week. That silenced them faster than anything else ever had. My phone went quiet. Blessedly quiet. Life resumed, and for the first time in years, I felt the absence of their noise not as emptiness, but as space. Space to work. Space to heal. Grandma and I fell into a rhythm again. I'd drive over on weekends, carrying takeout or fresh groceries. We'd garden in the backyard. She'd tell me which herbs healed what, and I'd listen like a kid, because with her, I still was. One afternoon, kneeling in the dirt beside her, I confessed something I hadn't said out loud. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever see me for who I am, not who they told themselves I was. She pressed a small seedling into my palm. You don't wait for the wrong soil to accept you, Ethan. You plant where the ground is good, and you grow anyway. I carried that sentence with me like a compass. Work flourished. Opportunities snowballed. Invitations to seminars, podcasts, collaborations. Clients trusted me because I treated their words like scaffolding, something that held weight, something that had to be built carefully. But I also knew better than to measure my worth only in contracts or paychecks. Success without healing is just another mask. So I started therapy. At first, it felt foreign, like trying to speak a language my mouth wasn't built for. But session by session, I learned to untangle shame from truth, anger from grief, resilience from defensiveness. I learned that surviving doesn't mean you're finished healing. It means you've given yourself the chance to start. Months passed. My parents stayed silent, kept at bay by legal boundaries they didn't want to test. Adam vanished into the background, too, the noise gone, replaced by a silence I didn't mind. Relatives, the ones who believed me, reached out now and then. Some relationships started new, built on honesty instead of performance. But the best part wasn't the vindication. It was the stillness. Sitting with Grandma on the porch, watching the evening light catch in her garden. Waking up and not bracing for a fight before my feet hit the floor. Riding without the old itch of proving myself. Strength, I realized, isn't in fists or in shouting louder than the lies. It's in standing, day after day, as yourself, steady, even when the world tries to twist your reflection. I don't know if my parents ever admitted the truth to anyone else. I don't know if Adam ever felt the weight of his confession. Maybe they never will. But I've stopped waiting. Their acknowledgement isn't the key to my peace. I am. I live my life with boundaries, with honesty, with gratitude for the one person who stood by me when the world caved in. My grandmother gave me a place to land, and that gave me the chance to rise. So if you ask me today whether I regret sending that email, my answer is no. It wasn't revenge. It was release. When I was 16, I thought strength meant fighting until someone listened. Now I know it means holding on to who you are even when no one does. I was thrown out, lied about, abandoned. But I didn't let those lies write my story. I wrote my own. And if you're listening to this wondering if you'll ever outrun the shadows people threw over you, you will. Not by running faster, but by walking steady, step after step, until you realize their shadows don't reach where you're going. Family can shape you, but they don't define you. What defines you is the character you hold on to when everything else is stripped away. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or told you'd never make it, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories like this one, and I promise, you are not alone.